Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ahead of the Curve. Today, I've got my good friend and guest Steph Villet on the phone, online with me today. I was going to say on the phone, but you're actually online, right?
It's kind of the same thing nowadays, right? Hi,
Yeah,
Jeff.
these days, phone, video conference, whatever. It's
all the same.
C'est la même chose.
C'est pareil.
Wait. So, Steph, welcome. Could you give us a little bit of a background of, who you are and who you work for?
Sure. I'm French. All right.
No.
So that's noted. So I'm Stephan Villet. I'm a co-founder here at Smart Monkeys. I started my career as a audio engineer, moved to Disney, moved to Miami, worked for Medialon, which is a show control publisher that you must know very well.
Me? No, I don't know anything about them. You're going to have to give me a whole rundown on who Medialon is and what they do.
We'll talk about this a bit more. And and then in the last 12 years or so, I've been working with a team here at Smart Monkeys. Our core business is show control, and I think it's a good thing, looking at the title. And we've been working all around many entertainment, and I think we'll dive into this.
Yeah, I think so. So can you give us a little bit of a background just on Smart Monkeys and, when it was, how long you guys have been around for?
Sure, yeah, so 12 years. So we started basically out of the sense that there was a need on the market for programmers that would be a bit more than programmers, actually. So if we look back at show control, for people who may not be familiar with this, at the very early days of show control, it was mainly about creating systems that would not really control so much, but mostly automate and synchronize. So what I mean by this is that it would be part of shows or attractions, and it would have a very specific scripted scenarios that might be or might not be synced with audio and video and that kind of things. Then it morphed into actually providing more complex and powerful interface for operation. So we're getting really into the control part of it. Nowadays, it has morphed into something that is much broader. So there is a lot of supervision and monitoring that is part of this, because basically on the day-to-day operation of a show, an attraction, a museum, or that kind of things, once the scripted part is encoded during production, it just goes on and on as part of the show again or the exhibit. But what's fundamental basically is to have the tools to monitor and get data and being able to analyze and act upon any issues or requests that the system would be throwing at the user. So that's basically what we're concentrating on. In terms of skill sets, and I think that's also something that we want to talk about today, software is really the base of it. But again, it went from programming software to actually more coding and developing. So again, for me, there is a big difference between programming and coding and developing. Programming is really using tools that you will set up and configure one way or another so it does something, whereas coding and developing is really starting from scratch with a specific language, and you have to build up everything. And I think that's also part of what happened with show control. It started really by configuring some very specific equipment to getting to actually developing software specific to clients and projects.
Awesome. I was just going to say to Landon, who just popped in, if you're looking for ahead of the curve, you're in the right place. If you're not looking for ahead of the curve, then you're not in the right place.
Then we are in the right place. That's for sure. Although I'm kind of an old-fashioned guy myself, as you can see.
Oh yeah, nice. Got some analog footage going on there.
But I think it's important to remember where we come from and what technology offered us in the past. But we need to not be stuck in it and understand that there are different paths ahead of us, and so we should look at them and take them rather than stick to what we've been doing for a very long time.
Absolutely. So let's dive a little bit into the show control side and get into what you guys do best. So,
well,
what is
I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, what have been kind of some of the more traditional or typical applications? I mean, you guys work in theme parks. You've been working in large fixed installations. You're kind of working in any type of system format that requires monitoring, requires content management.
Right, and again, I think we grew the same way that show control would evolve. That means when we started, we were really asked to do some programming for a very specific scope, and most of our projects were actually extremely entertainment based. So we would primarily work for theme parks, a bit for museum, but then technology evolved in a way that there is a lot of place in the market for experience. So public experiences, transportation hubs, and all those places where people are just not necessarily going for the entertainment part, but they need to be entertained in some ways. And in those places specifically, that's where you don't necessarily have the usual teams that you can find in the more entertainment parts. So you don't necessarily have technicians or audio guys or video guys. So a lot of it needs to be automated. It needs to be easy to operate, and people that have a look at the system needs to have a lot of data coming their way, so they can take the appropriate course of action or contact the people that are more, able to help them. So nowadays we have a lot of work into what we like to call architectural entertainment. So big LED screens, not the types of Times Square, for instance, but more artistic part of it. We do a lot of also experiential environment, that kind of things. So we get to actually work with a lot of people that you've had in this show in the past. Lots of people that are coming really from the creative standpoint. And although I love to think that we are creative people, on the very technical side, the real people who are creative, who are creating the content and the experience, nowadays are using tools that help them doing what they want to do, but that also produces a lot of data that can be used to interact with the technology around them. And that's basically where we get to, we're this kind of glue between the artist, the owner, the technology integrator, and some of the people here. We're just looking at everything, and we're finding ways to connect the dots between those different elements. I think that defines what we do.
So what's been some of the more challenging things that you've had to accomplish, or some of the more challenging parts? I mean, it's all really challenging, right? Because we're dealing with a bunch of different software, a bunch of different systems that communicate in different ways. But what have been some of the more challenging elements that you guys have come across? Has it been communication based? Has it been, technology based? Like where kind of have you had to draw the line? Or
I think one of the challenges that we face is not so much with the technology, because technology, you can learn about it, you can try to apply it with success or not, and you have to learn about it. I think for us, the real challenge is actually to translate what we feel could be done and what can be achieved with specific type of technology that can be scary for the people we are talking to. So those people can be the owners, they can be our partners like integrators. And usually when we come on board, it's because there is a part of the big picture that is a bit more blurry than everywhere else. So, it's like, let's bring the monkey in, and we're going to tell them, we're going to explain the challenge. We have this parade, we want a float to move, and we want to be able to track them, and we want to be able to be super precise, but at the same time, we don't want to use, radio frequency or that kind of things. And so we have to find ways to deal with that. And usually, because it's challenging, we come up with technology or techniques that are not conventional, and I have to say, I see our clients. I see them to put them into two buckets most of the time, and interestingly, the ones that are coming more from a corporate background. So sometimes the casinos or those kind of clients, they are heavily leveraging their IT department for other part of their business. And because the technology that we use the most every day and more is really just taking the approach of the IT and putting it into our AV entertainment world, usually those people are fully on board and the solution resonates with them. When we talk about some other aspect of our clientele, like theme park, for instance, that's a bit more difficult because theme parks are not something that you can find in every city or in every office. They are just a very limited number of very big theme park, and they've been done a very certain way since Disney started long time ago. And because experience is something that obviously is extremely valued, there is a lot of scare about listening to experienced people who might tend to stick to old-fashioned ways of doing things, which might work. But the thing is, for us, it's challenging because when we try to change that, when we try to bring new technology that we feel will bring a lot more efficiency and reliability and overall ease of operation, it's sometimes really hard to get through and basically to end up doing it the way we think we should do it. But I guess it's a challenge for every type of business. You try to convince your client to do it some way, and maybe the client is not really ready to hear what you have to provide or to propose.
Yeah, or they're not aware of what the possibilities may be, even within their own company. Within their own company,
and so it's interesting because we have this client who's a very, very big, one of the top, theme park owner and operator, and we have endless conversation with several people in their team. Obviously, the team is really big, and we're talking about IT concept like virtualization and those kind of things, and they're extremely scared. And they're like, it's are you sure it's something that we can use at the theme park? And we look at them and we're like, well, you've been using it for your parade for almost a decade every day. And it's working fine. So really, we did? Yes, you guys did. So, and we have more and more of those examples. So it helps, but it's not necessarily sufficient.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess that comes from just being educated and educating within the company as well. I see some of the guys from the local up in New York are online, which is awesome. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I wanted to kind of jump into some of the questions as well. I want to say hi to Priscilla, of course, and Jonathan and Sean and the rest of the gang that's on here. But Dan Robato brought up an interesting question. And just so that you all know, while we're going through this, keep it very casual, very conversational. If you guys have any questions you want to ask, either myself or the guest, just pop them into the comments on whatever platform you're watching on, and we'll get around to them as they come in. So Dan was asking, can you speak to Waterfall versus Agile control design, and how do you get customers' needs up front without scope creep? I think that is a fantastic question, Dan. It's a bit of a doozy to get into, like right off the bat, as you can see, Steph's squirming a little bit. But I think it's a great question to kind of kick this off.
Well, I feel like there's two parts to the design, the control design. There is the technology and the hardware and what type of solution you're going to use, and then how you're going to use it, how you're going to program it, what is the part that you're going to be fully customized for your customers. The first one usually is not that complicated, basically. It's part of our job to understand what they want and then to translate this into a sustainable technical way to implement it. The real problem, obviously, is what do we do with the programming itself, with the interface that will be provided to the user to operate the space. Because usually it's very simple. I have this huge thing. I want to control things. I want to see what's going on, and I want to be able to, fix it when there is an issue. Go. So it's really hard. I guess it comes to a lot of discussion with the clients beforehand. It also comes to something that we see more and more, and that's interesting because basically, Smart Monkeys is a service company at the core. But over the course of so many projects, we ended up actually having a product, and I think it's kind of a response to that kind of challenges that we have during control design. The product that we have basically provides a way to aggregate all the different elements that you have in your system, to have a central point of access to all of them, and then to provide a set of features that we've realized every single of our clients wanted or needed at different levels. And basically, it's interesting because we're really talking about things that are very popular with the IT kind of approach. So everything that goes from user management to a system-wide logs, scheduling, and having access to remote machines and everything. And it helps enormously to be able to have something to show as a base of the operation workspace, basically. And so nowadays we're in a better position to basically show what we can do on that sense to our clients, either by showing them the product if we feel it fits the needs. The other thing, obviously, is because we've worked on so many projects, it's much easier nowadays to pick one that we've done in the past, explain how we responded to the challenge, and how we would be looking at a similar or not too far approach to their own system and problems. If it answer the questions.
I think that's a pretty good, well-rounded answer in general, for sure. I think going from, I guess, back to the fundamental core of what Dan was asking between Agile and Waterfall method, especially with control or anything else for that matter, for the most part, I guess a lot of it depends on client expectations and moving forward, because you've got ad hoc projects, and then you've of course got the continuing projects that have the same requirements over and over again, and you are basically adapting and changing and adding in different features to fulfill those requirements as of course you're pushing your product forward, right? Aside from an ad hoc project that might have very specific needs, and you're basically waterfalling development and show control, very specific show control requirements, and system design requirements.
It's whole, this line between how much are we providing by off-the-shelf product versus how much we do, from scratch for a specific project, has always been something difficult. The point, though, over my career, which starts to be a bit longer than I would want to, gray hair and everything, I've seen countless examples where, for the sake of having an incredible experience that no one else had, there is this, and I think it's changing, but for a long time, there has been this urge to get into, let's create some sort of things that's never been done before from scratch, like prototype level. And then you get to a point where you are very excited, and the client is very excited about it. But then we kind of forget that that thing needs to work on for years and years. And that's where you have the downfall, basically. It looks great, it's fantastic, and then after a few weeks, you realize it's full of bugs, and, well, the guy who can fix it is actually the one freelancer who worked on it and is now on the other side of the planet. And in any case, he used the library, which is not supported anymore, and basically there is nothing that you can do except calling someone to, fix it entirely or rewrite it entirely. So right from the start, with our team, we've always been looking at how can we leverage as much as possible existing product, and Medialon is one of them, for instance, that we've used for a long time, and we're still using it.
Yeah, well, yeah, you guys have got definitely very intimate knowledge, and a core element of it kind of fell within Medialon way back in the day. So I'd probably say you guys are definitely very intimate with the Medialon product,
and used it for a long time.
Been through the trenches with it for a long time. So I wanted to bring up another question. Dan Miro was asking, do you guys do any projects for Broadway?
Well, as a matter of fact, we've been working with Radio Serial for many years now, nowadays. We've had a couple of other projects, but to be fairly honest, not that many. And I think it's kind of the same thing as for the theme park. is that there is a way of doing things that have been going on for a very, very long time. Now, the big difference with the theme park is that the theme park are fixed installation, and they for efficiency and for cost effectiveness, there is a need to have some automation, or at least there is a need because of the scale. There is a need for the team who operates the space to not have to be, the best lighting designer on Broadway. That would be stuck over there and work the entire year, day in, day out in Orlando. I think many would kill themselves because that's not what they're looking for. And I think that works better in Broadway because you're still in a, you expect that kind of show to be run by a team of a very specific professional, and it's a live show, and it's a live audience where you have only one shot at it. That means if you do a Broadway show and it fails, well, there's no other. You can't point to the other attraction saying, well, go there, the line is open, and you'll come back in 15 minutes. So it's a very different approach.
Yeah.
But that said, what we've been providing and what we've been working at Radio City, for instance, we have been able to provide some elements that are very interesting for the efficiency, the operation, and the monitoring of the shows over there.
So Brian, I just want to say hi. Hey to Brian. Brian had a question here for you. One challenge many of us has faced over the years has been getting always on remote connections into show control systems for remote monitoring and maintenance. With the pandemic, have you seen that trend change at all? And what have you done to assure secure connections to your customers? Great question, Brian.
It's a great question from Brian. I have to point out to the fact that Electrosonic is a very good partner of ourselves, and they've been one of the first of the integrators in this market that we know of that have been eager to not to just embrace everything that comes through the IT and the way we look at things and so on, but they've been very open to understand what it would bring as a benefit, and they've been investing heavily in terms of resources and learning from it and everything. So so that's the first point, and I think the question is very, very interesting. And we've seen it obviously lately in those months. What we aim for is really in terms of control and operation of a system, again, is to have one place where you can get at that will open the door for you to access everything else in the system. So in a before 2020 time, we feel like it's very important because if you take a theme park or a museum, somewhere you have a large scale system, you don't want every time there is an issue, someone calls you on the radio and you have to go over there and type in the KVM and look at things and then get the box over there, see if it's running, and I see this PC is not running, I need to reboot it, but first I need to, there's lots of things. Mm-hmm. And nowadays we have all the technology that allows for us to remote in or to host different elements or to monitor everything from afar. So the idea of a control system, a show control system nowadays, at least for us as it's defined, is really this one place you can access that will open the door again to everything, every subsystems and those kind of things, but also to act upon them, to be able to extract information that you can look at. Because most of the time, the hardest thing to do when it comes to maintenance is not so much about maintaining or fixing. It's first of all to troubleshoot. And that's where the big issue here. If you don't have the tools, if you don't have the means to troubleshoot and to refine where the issue is, it doesn't really matter if you have everything you need to maintain or fix it. If you've lost 3 days finding where it comes from, that's not worth it. And so what's interesting is when you get to that point and you have access to all your system from one place, it's actually quite easy to remote to that place. Because you don't need to, you don't need to be like, oh God, now I'm home, I can't get on site. How do I access this piece and that part and that part? I don't really care about all this. All I need is to get to that very central portal to my system, which means also that in terms of security, in terms of IT policies that you have to apply to this portal, it's also much easier, because if everything is already set locally, you just need to have the right rules to get to that entry point and to manage it. So for us, it is really just getting the remote connection to that place is exactly like you would have to use a VPN to access another place somewhere else. So there is no specific answer. There is a lot of different rules to access it that pertains purely to IT management and network connection.
Yeah, I was going to elaborate on that. Do you need to get that, Steph? Or is there somebody in there to grab it?
I don't know. Let me check.
So while he's disappeared for a minute, and hopefully he does come back, because he knows a lot more about show control presently than I do. But I was just going to, oh, he's back. I was going to, Steph, now that you're back, actually, I was going to ask you about, just to kind of touch upon that point a little bit more for point of entry. Do you find that people are using more localized based systems, or are people starting to adapt cloud-based technologies and cloud-based systems?
Well, you're touching on a very interesting point.
I try to do that.
You're always ahead of the curve.
Dan, I don't know any dirty jokes.
The problem with the cloud is that it's not on-premise. And I think there are lots and lots of different ways to basically leverage IT technology, IT techniques, all that kind of things, without having to host anything in the cloud. What could be interesting, and we're looking at this, for instance, is that one of the challenges to have a system that is already prepped on site, where you have this one point where you can get access to everything, where you have this one portal, is that to access to it remotely, you may have some technical limitation. You may have a need for a fixed IP address or that kind of things. If you go through the cloud, you might have some flexibility in there. That means if the system itself connects to the cloud, then anyone connecting to that point in the cloud then can be redirected to the system, the local system. So in that sense, the cloud can serve as a bridge. But I don't think for, at least for almost 99% of our clients and the product that we work on, I don't think the idea of hosting that type of system in the cloud is the right way to do so. And looking at the fear sometimes that we have from the clients and partners into using pure IT technology like virtualization and other things like that, you start saying, well, on top of this, we're not going to put it into your closet. We're going to put it over there in the cloud. Amazon is going to take care of it. No, I don't think it's going to work.
So how would you deal with multi-satellite venues? Would you do local system, local system integration, and then maybe cloud-based point access, or would it all have to be point to point?
You can then having a central repository where you get all this data, but I think you need to have a certain autonomy locally for the system to run on its own and be able to manage itself. And it's always about where do you process the data. If the data is securely aggregated at the local level, and you always have the data and the means to work on it, having something remote that would be managing this location plus multiple other locations is not very complicated. But I think there is a very important look at it and really understand that having a centralized supervision system in the cloud doesn't mean hosting all your systems in the cloud. I think for most of our partners and client, having their system on premises is very important. Now, we could see an example where you have an integrator who is providing that type of system for many of their clients, and they could be all the different ones, and then they might want to have a centralized system in the cloud to manage those installations. in the case of providing SLAs and doing that kind of things, and that's perfectly fine. But you still need to have this segregation between the different system, and in that case, not only just for the security of the system, but also for the privacy of the different client.
That totally makes sense. In a localized instance, do you guys find yourselves also coming against, I guess, more legacy-based products, legacy-based installations where client is looking for new features or client's looking for new ways for access and control of their system, but don't want to really stray away from some of the stuff the more legacy-based stuff that they've already got in place?
I mean, usually when a client actually tried, new product that brings a lot of new feature and a lot of flexibility in the way they work and so on and on, they are ready to jump in. Problem is sometimes it goes against how you use them, and so there is this fear that locks them into using the older one. There is an interesting example with the QSys, for instance. The QSys guys have worked and have devoted a lot of resources into having two QSys core being able to be redundant between each other. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of work that has been done to this, a lot of testing and everything, and they are very proud of it, and I sure would be as well. But still, a lot of their clients, they rather have dozens of small core, distributed all over the place, because they're like, well, you know what, if this core fails, then only that part of my exhibit or my park will go down. So the QSys guy will answer by saying, yeah, but what we're offering is a redundant system that will never fail. Yes, but if it fails, I'd rather have this small piece over there.
A small piece of it,
but it's been designed that it can fail over. And that type of discussion, we have the same when it comes to our product. We are bringing the IT technology that allows for seamless, redundant failover and that kind of things, and the discussion goes the same way. It's like you can centralize everything, having everything into this cluster, and it's fully redundant. All right, but can we have a smaller unit and have it all over the place? So that's the kind of challenge that we have with it, because what people have a hard time understanding is that the security that you feel by having multiple units makes it extremely more complex in terms of operation, in terms of maintenance in the future, and although a long time ago it would make sense, because a long time ago, or maybe not so long ago, video would be going through video cables, analog, and lighting would do the same on their own path, and audio would do the same. Nowadays, everything is just data. Everything is just 1 and zeros, and it goes through the network. So you don't have this need for different kind of infrastructure for audio and video and light and control. Everything is the same. So is it really worth having everything distributed when you rely on an architecture that has been designed and that has been invented for the purpose of having it, integrated? That's just the kind of question that we spend a lot of time trying to answer.
Yeah, it's really interesting now, because we also look at different transmissions that are, for example, video transmission has always been basically from the point of being rendered or being output, being transmitted through a type of cable format, whether it's DisplayPort or HDMI or VGA analog or whatever, or SDI. But now we're moving into much more digital formats, for video transmission, and we're seeing things like ST2110, which is network-based, and SDVoE technologies, which are network-based, and we're starting to see those technologies being, basically introduced and adopted, but formatted in a very digital manner as well. Right. And it's going to be very interesting to see how you guys in the show control world can also interface with those transmissions along with the data that you're already mitigating with other software platforms that you're monitoring as well.
So it's incredibly weird that you're talking about this, and I have to tell everyone we haven't talked about anything before that. So that's my first participation in the show, and I was surprised by the fact that we had no discussion about what we would be talking about. So it's interesting because it makes it very live and very surprising onset. And so you're talking about SDVOE, and we are just about to announce a partnership with ZV, who's a very big player in SDVOE.
You're welcome. I had no idea.
I know, and so it's not even out there. I mean, I think the press release on their side have been out for since yesterday, but we haven't done our work on our side because I was so concentrating on this specific show. And so basically, our product, Isaac, which is a hosting platform on top of providing interfaces and everything, their product, the Zipper, which is basically the management platform for the SDVOE network using their product, is going to be now integrated fully into Isaac. So you don't have to buy this box that does the management. It's fully part of Isaac, and it brings also a good example of what we're talking about, because we've been concentrating on using the IT network or topology and everything. But the other side of this is that everything that we use nowadays is software. I mean, you look at
well, that's what SDVOE is, right? Software-defined video.
SDVOE software, Dante's software-defined audio, but even the product. I mean, you look at a lighting console. It's a nice piece of hardware that is running. It's just an operating system with a software. I mean, nowadays it's even more so. It can be Windows embedded or Linux. Video players are kind of the same, and you know a lot about this. Back 30 years ago, you would have a box with play, pause, stop, and nowadays all the video player on the market are, just a computer. Not just, but they're a computer, and you don't have play, pause, stop anymore. And actually, most of them, you turn them on, they do nothing, because there is nowhere you can put tape or anything. You have to program them somewhere or another.
Yeah, you have to build the logic.
Exactly. So some people be like, it's a nightmare. Yeah, but you can do so much more nowadays. It's crazy how much you can do with those software, and it applies to everything. We have another partnership with megapixelvr. They're producing their incredibly powerful Helios video processor for LED, and they also have what they call Omnis, which is a device that is used for all the monitoring at a very granular level for all the tiles that you have on your LED walls and all the processors and everything. Works with the Helios, but with some other stuff. But anyway, the point is, we've been working together because we use that kind of things into our project, and they also have a very software-minded approach. So for them, the hardware is necessary for the type of market we're in, but all the thinking is inside the software. We need, they need to be able to improve the software over time, and so on and so on, to a point that we actually started discussion about having integration between their platform Omnis and the platform Isaac. But today, when you buy an Isaac system, you can spawn an Omnis instance right inside Isaac as well, because we work together, and they basically provided a version of Omnis software that is completely self-contained and that is living right inside Isaac. And that's the kind of approach, where we're looking at a very much integrated system rather than integration of systems, because that's how IT is doing it. And I'm not saying we should do it because IT does it. It's just that the challenges that we're facing in terms of reliability, redundancy, and distributing the data, that's something that the IT industry had to deal with for years, for decades. And they've come up with technology that would be just, stupid for us to not look at them and use them whenever it makes sense for us.
I think that's why we're starting to see a lot of that kind of flourish. Well, we started seeing it a number of years ago, but it's really starting to come into the front of our scope now. And a lot of those technologies are starting to bloom, I think, a lot more and become more transparent to so many different companies and so many different people. You're starting to see so many different infrastructures of, IT professionals now having to be on staff for all kinds of different events, from live events to fixed installation. And I wanted to kind of dig into the part about getting into IT and the importance of it inside of our industry, because there's still a lot of people out there that I think turn their head to IT or infrastructure-based technologies, and it can be definitely very overwhelming to get into and to learn. So what would be some of your advice to some of the viewers who might not have that much familiarity and want to get into, show control and integrated systems? And then we'll get to Dan's next question that just popped up about redundancy.
There's Alan, who's my business partner, has this saying that he's been carrying for a long time, but it's true. I know. It's that you don't come to show control. Show control comes to you, and it might be changing a bit now, because actually show control is getting very, very important, more important than ever. But it's true that most of the people who comes to show control, they have a different background. They come from the audio, they come from the lighting and everything. But I think what's very I guess important to understand for show control is that the background you may have, or the knowledge you have into those very specific disciplines that relates to entertainment, should it be audio, lighting, or video, or that kind of things, even staging, very important for understanding your environment, understanding what might be the demand from the client. But in terms of technology, it's actually easier for someone who has an IT background, a computer science background, to understand the workflow of audio, video, and that kind of things. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to be an audio guy to do audio. That's not what I'm saying. But for show control, we don't really dive into the specificity of audio itself. We're not acoustician. We're not designing lighting. We're not creating content. We're not creating content for video, for instance. What we need to understand is how the audio flows through the system. We need to understand how the video is going to get from A to B, and how we need to act to cue those different parts of it. And same for everything else. And I think nowadays, having a strong understanding of network, for instance, knowing exactly how to deal with a Mac platform, a Windows platform, and a Linux platform, without having to say, well, this one I don't, that's very much of the big thing in show control.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, you're looking at it from a systematic point of view, and if you can essentially put together a lighting system, an audio system, a video system, then you've kind of got the groundwork to start to get into show control.
Correct.
Yeah, because the formats and the way that things are done are essentially the same for the most part. So let's get back to the redundancy question really quick with Dan Miro. And Drew, by the way, awesome comment. We'll throw that back up in a minute about the book. That we always love references like that to help people out and give people resources to be able to learn more. So Dan's question here, for redundancy and monitoring, do you leverage vendors such as F5, Cisco, and other major network gear providers, or do you develop your own solutions?
It depends. It depends on the design. It depends on the needs and everything. So I think it's a bit of both. But they are, I mean, it's like, we talked earlier in this discussion, we talked about the fact that if you have off-the-shelf product that can be used, then yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. We've been using a Juniper network switches for a while, because they have their virtual chassis, for instance, feature. That's something that we like and we've used in the past. But Cisco has also their own solution that can provide what we need, or partially what we need into the design of a system. So to answer the question, yes, we rely on those kind of elements, but they're generally not the one solution that answer the overall question. So all those different technology are bits and pieces that we have to still put together in a nice way and an efficient way, and then provide the user with something that does not relate between them and the technology. I mean, what we want and what we love in the system that we provide is that when the user uses the system, they use their system. They don't really care or know if it's a Cisco system behind, or a Juniper, or if it's that video player or another, if it's those kind of things. And actually, it's a very interesting aspect of it, because if you can have a system that is transparent like this in terms of communication without actually being transparent in terms of what's behind, if the user doesn't need to, that means along the way, when you maintain the system, when you evolve, you make the system evolve, you may want to change the technology without having to change the user experience. Mm-hmm. So they can be, I'm thinking about LEX, which is one of the very old projects that we worked on. And there are plenty of PCs that have changed. A video player have changed and everything, but it had a very minimal impact on the way people operate, or even the way they see the system in itself. And I think it's important for the long term, because then you don't have to rebuild interfaces, you don't have to retrain everyone, you don't have to do all those kind of things. And you can mix and match different systems when you have a very large situation. Which is absolutely awesome.
Before we leave, I just want to touch upon the switches. It's always fun because they're kind of finicky, but have you had a lot of challenges in the configurations of switches or the limitations of the switches with your system and your platform?
Not challenges, no. Is it easy every day? And no, but
so
but if everything was easy,
make it positive, right?
It's not a challenge. It's just part of your work every day. I think if you start to feel, we've seen this with some projects and some partners and some clients, where they want to rely the least on the network because they don't trust it. Well, when we look at this, we're like, well, there is an issue, but it's not with the network itself, or at least it's not with the network how it should be. It's either they don't have the right people to look at it, or they don't have the right team to take care of it. I understand that sometimes you have to choose not to go for a technology that is too complex, because on the operational standpoint there is neither the budget or the knowledge to actually maintain it. That I get, that's perfectly fine. That's part of the requirements and all that kind of things. But if that's not the case, you should not look at a technology and be like, I don't think it's going to work because I've heard that somewhere it was not working. To finish on that and to talk about Medialon, you said we've used it a lot. Before working for Smart Monkeys, I was working for Medialon here in the US, and I've had countless people that I was trying to convince to buy in the Medialon ecosystem, and they were like, no, because I've seen this project over there and it's not working and it's horrible and the show control is not working. Medialon is I don't want to use it, period. And I'm like, well, when you get in a concert hall and you listen to the audio and the audio is really bad, do you ask what console they're using? If you get to the same place and the light is all over the place and you hate it, do you ask what console it is? No, because you're like, well, the people who have been programming the show, they may not have done a good job. And that's what show control is. Show control is just a way of using technology. And if it's not working, it's not because the technology doesn't work. It's because the people who choose the technology or implemented the technology or are supporting the technology are not doing a good job. Because in the first place, if the technology wasn't good, they wouldn't have choose the technology.
That's very true. So before we wrap up, I'm going to just grab the last one from Dan. Dan's been giving some fantastic questions here. So how do you deal with vulnerabilities and updates? Or do solutions don't need updating and fixes?
I think it's the conundrum of IT. I think you should update, but you should not update like you update your laptop. You should update with the same concern that IT department have. So you need to have a way to update, test, and roll back. And as a matter of fact, virtualization, for instance, which has been created by IT, is fantastic for that, because you can always, when you're working on a virtual machine, for instance, and obviously we don't have time to get into this, but if you work on a virtual machine rather than a real machine,
on virtualization entirely.
Exactly. If you work on a virtual machine, which is typically what people are doing in the IT, they don't have a computer, they have a virtual instance of them. You can basically, in a matter of seconds, you can back it up entirely at the state it is. You do your update, you do some tests, and if something doesn't work, it takes a few seconds to roll back, and you don't have to change any configuration, you don't have to reboot any system, and so on. The point here is not so much about how it's done, it's the fact that all those questions makes perfect sense, and they are, hundreds, if not thousands of people who've had the same questions, and then you have an entire industry who's been working on dealing with them and to bring some solution. And the fact is, we're not using enough of those solutions when they are applicable to the AV industry, to the entertainment industry. There are many, many places where we're too scared to step away from what we've been doing for so long that everything new is like, it's not going to work. Yeah, but it's working for the guys. It's working for the banks. Actually, in theme park, it's working for all the system that takes your credit card when you pay for the restaurants and everything. And if you don't believe that it's important enough that the backend system is actually extremely good and efficient and reliable, then you should think twice.
That's some great advice, Steph. So I just wanted to thank you, Steph, so much for being on the show with me today. It's been a pleasure having you here. For those of you who are watching, and Brett, I haven't forgotten about you, buddy. I'll get back in touch with you. I'll call you soon. But anybody who wants to get in touch with Steph, you can reach him at steph@smartmonkeys.com. You can also go to smartmonkeys.com for more information about the company in general, which is awesome. Also, if you guys have been enjoying the show, we do this week after week. We bring on different speakers all the time. We also have a tip jar called Be Our Hero. So a little bit always goes a long way. Any help we can get there is appreciated. Next week, I am going to be bringing on somebody fairly familiar with a lot of you, a guy named Ruben Lane, complete nut job and a dear, dear friend of mine for many, many years, who also works in the industry. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things media server-wise and technology-wise and some of the things that he's come across during his career. So that's going to be really fun. And we'll have to make sure, or you'll have to make sure to come check that out next week. I just wanted to say thank you, Steph, and to all the viewers that come in week after week, and for all of your support. And as I say every single week, stay ahead of the curve, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.